Welcome to this week's Talk of the Town podcast. I'm your host, Andy Burrows, and we are live this week from the Hub here in Dunstable Town Football Club. I'm here with Dunstable Town Chairman. Andrew, how are you, sir?
Hello, Andy. I'm
Always a pleasure
good,
to
mate.
sit down and talk some Dunstable Town with you, mate. Things are going really well for Dunstable. Going well for us on the pitch, mate. But I haven't been able to sit down and talk to you really since the start of the season. So let's wind it back. Since Steve and everyone else has come into the club, it was always going to be a bit of a topsy-turvy, a bit of a never easy. I've said many times to Steve and Rich and Swanee and all the Liam and everyone when I chat to them and Rory, when you come into a new club and you've taken over from what was Joe Deeney's team last season,
big steps to fill.
it was never going to, never going to be easy. How did you feel as a board as we sit here now in October? Yeah. When things weren't slightly going right, because we've spoke loads of times about it's going really well now, and there's been patience with Steve and the boys, and I know Steve well enough, and I've interviewed him enough times to know that these boys were. It was always going to come right, and Steve will say to me now, look, we haven't done anything yet. We've won a few games. Go back to the start of the season though. Was there any trepidation from the board when things weren't slightly going right, and we were sitting bottom of the league? We hadn't won a game. It was as much as there's a pressure on the management team when they come in, was there any pressure on you guys thinking, whoa, did we get this right?
I don't think there was, actually. No, because we always knew that this was going to be a long-term appointment. We're looking in not just this month, next month, the month after. We're looking next season and the season after, and hopefully the season after. Because when we interviewed and when we appointed, that was very clear from the guys' presentation that this, for them, was going to be a long-term project. And with a long-term project, if there are hiccups, if there are bumps in the road at the very beginning, you manage that and you weather the storm, because you know that the road ahead is going to be less bumpy than the road you're currently on. And I think that was very much our taking. So for us, for me personally, for Neil as interim director of football, we felt very much our roles was to give the lads support, to, in a sense, try and take away some of the pressure, because the internal pressure that a group of managers stroke coaches coming into a club with the history of Dunstable Town, and I know we're at step 5, but we are a club 140 years old with a history, with an alumni, George Best, Jeff Astle, Peter Chioso, Kerry Dixon, etc. So, okay, it's still a big job in non-league football. So the internal pressure that they would have felt was going to be far greater than, Andrew sort of scowling maybe at 5-5 in the results. And that's not the way I work. I don't work like that. I in a sense, I see my role, and Neil, I think, definitely sees his role in terms of support, offering an ear to talk into, particularly when things aren't going to plan. So, from my perspective, and I know from Neil's perspective, and I think the vast majority of the board, we thought we need to give these guys support. We need to protect them as best we can from external voices, from your Twitter trolls, etc. And we saw them, and
Don't have to tell me about them.
We ignore them because, in a sense, we knew from when we appointed them that these were the guys we wanted to do the job, and they in a sense, their aspirations met our aspirations. What they wanted to achieve was what we wanted to achieve. Timescales may be, slightly at variance, but this was a rebuild. This was a complete rebuild. We were grateful, to the likes of Desi and Josh Hatton, James Lauder, Alex Butt, who stayed with us, and apologies for who else I might have forgotten. But otherwise, you're bringing together a brand new group of players. And listen, I've never played the game. I've never sat in a dugout. I'm an armchair supporter before I became secretary. But, I know enough about football to know that a rebuild takes time. And we're not Watford. No disrespect to Pete Mom.
Thank God.
And Liam and any other Watford supporter. We don't get rid of managers after 6 months. So for me and for Neil, and I think for, again, I keep repeating myself, I know for the board members, this was a question of we need to give these guys time, we need to give them support. When you've got the likes of Dylan Bacon wanting to come back to training, and you've got Carl Davison-Gordon's in a sense still around, these are good people, and I had, not mentioning any names, Andy, but I had chair people, I should say, in the game. I think maybe I'm sort of thinking, poor old Andrew's probably, looking at our results, he's probably feeling a little bit of pressure. He's probably feeling it. And so people within the game who I respect and who I trust, managers, saying, don't do anything rash. Yeah. These are good guys, and it'll come right. And, that first game at FC Romania, wow. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, brilliant. Because, the person I felt the happiest for was for Steve. Because you could sense, or I could sense, that sort of stress, anxiety, pressure that was there inside him. I genuinely hope it wasn't external coming in on him, because I know that's the way Neil doesn't work like that. I don't work like that. But
it's the way football works, though, isn't it? If you don't get results, and I know Steve, but as a manager, you do want to get results. And like I say, I know I'm kind of involved inside the dressing room at training, so I didn't have any doubts that Steve and these boys were going to get it right. But does it you have to kind of shut out outside noise when and then people will say, oh, it's only step 5. But like you say, a club of Dunstable Town, and like I mentioned to you plenty of times, you've only got to log on to our social media on a Saturday night when we lose to say, there's loads of people that want to jump on us when we lose. Absolutely. You don't hear from them all when we win. How important was it for you guys just to block out that outside noise? Because you were probably hearing it as much as I was. You were probably getting texts and calls. And Andrew, have you made the right decision here? Like you say, we all knew you had. But, because I haven't spoken to you since the start of the season on camera, it's just good to get your view of where you were as the season was progressing to... We'll get to where we are now, but just as a board during the meetings and stuff, was there any ever a moment when you were like, we're going to have to bunker down here and just ride this storm a little bit? And it's probably the terminology I'm looking for.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I sort of understand it. I think how I describe it as it was, we need to give these guys support, because these are guys. Look at what they achieved at Harpenden. I know they work with Mickey, but they've got a track record. They've got a CV, and we know that good coaches, good managers, don't become bad coaches and bad managers overnight. So you look at, okay, what can we do in a sense to play our bit? You don't want to infantilise people and start giving them lectures in the sense of what I actually need is an arm around the shoulders and say, hang on in there. We've got your back. We've got faith in you. And I tell you what, Andy, and I'll be, as I sit here, hand on my heart, etc. I did not have one supporter come up to me and say, are you sure you made the right choice? Yeah. We have had previously, and people who I respect in the club will come to me and say, yeah, is it time you did something and what have you? Nobody, absolutely nobody.
Do you think that's a little bit a different thing as well for non-league football? Not many. I can't exactly walk up to Daniel Levy and tell him, I think you got this wrong. And, that's where non-league football is different, because, we're going to get onto all the community work later, but because you're approachable at every game. Steve, I say this all the time. It's like, oh, Andy, how sometimes do you do these podcasts after you lose? I can do a Tottenham podcast. It's not like I've got to go and see any of the players on Tuesday at training. It's very different at non-league football, isn't it? And not putting down step 5 football, because we're here because we love non-league football, and I prefer watching Dunstable Town than I do watching the Premier League. I've made no bones about that. But because you are at games and everyone knows they can come and approach you, it's very easy to come to you and say, "Oh, Andrew, I'm not sure about this one," when we were losing. But you're right. I didn't hear much of it at the start of the season, if at all, really. I think there's always that difficulty when you transition from what we had last season, the last few seasons with Joe, because it was very in your face. And Joe was brilliant. He was a character. And we've all had to adapt, myself included, when you do interviews and stuff like that. But I've got to know Steve on the level now where we both feel comfortable with each other and what we're doing.
Yeah.
It's been one of them, we say this all the time, and I don't know if this was what you guys felt. We've mentioned this a lot on our shows. Patience isn't a word that football fans or football people like. Is it something that we've had to have at Dunstable Town for the start of the season?
Yes. Yeah. And I will say it over and over again that this is a long-term project. And if you go back 3-4 years ago to when we restructured the club to become a community benefit society, it was all about providing a sustainable future. And it's the old adage of we will play at the highest level, it is sustainable for us to do so. So, the P word, the promotion, lovely, that's our aspiration. That's Steve, Rob, Rich's, Liam's aspiration as well, is to get promotion. If it's not this season, is it going to be next season? If it's not that season, is it the one after? But it has to be, in a sense, when the club is able to be financially sustainable at step 4, because step 4 brings with it a whole range of new costs. So simple things, your referees are going to be far more expensive.
Travel costs, everything goes up, the away games. Yeah,
absolutely.
Does a rebuild take longer in non-league football than it would? We always mention the Premier League and the Championship, and me and Matt have spoke about it a few times on the shows. Does a rebuild at non-league football at Dunstable Town take longer because of things like budgets? And I'm not here to talk money with you at all, but you take into consideration, like, if a real Bedford had to rebuild, it'd be a lot easier than Dunstable Town rebuilding. I don't mean that disrespectfully,
no.
because they can just go, well, here's a little bit of a pot of money. Go and get this player who might want X amount of money. Where at Dunstable, Steve would love player A, but he can't afford player A. Is a rebuild at this level, at Dunstable Town, is it more difficult than it would be, say, as you go higher up the pyramid?
That's a really good question, Andy, and I'm probably not enough of a sort of student of history with a sort of an encyclopedic knowledge of players and different clubs to know whether that counts or not.
I guess what I'm asking is there a time frame on a rebuild at Dunstable Town? Because budgets dictate. We've had players come and we've had players come back and players go. Which we'll get into in a little bit. How does a rebuild look at Dunstable Town? 2 seasons, 3 seasons. I mean, we laughed when we done our podcast in the summer. Matt was like, "I want promotion now." He's bored. Matt's bored of going to all these grounds. And I remember looking at your face thinking, if we don't go this season, but I was with Matt at the time. I'm like, I really don't want to go to some of these grounds on a Tuesday night. How long do you kind of give a rebuild at non-league level at Dunstable Town? So many factors come into it. There's money. There's players will go down the road for an extra £30 in non-league football. Joe always said that to me last season. So difficult.
Let's give a big shout out to Luca Lodder, because Luca has turned down 2 very good offers. And, I said a private thank you to him, and he said, "No worries, I'm here." He said, "This is my club." And the way he sort of, pats the badge, etc., So, some players will do, Andy, but some, and Luca's a good case in point, and I know Steve has mentioned it in his interview, so I'm not sort of letting any cats out of the bag. So some will, some won't. We go back to, in a sense, 4 years ago, and Matt and I had taken over as chair and vice chair, and Brad, Abby, and Pete Bottom had all come into the club earlier in the year, and we'd had several resignations from the committee. So the club, in a sense, was the first team, not so much the youth section, but was really being run sort of by Wayne as well. Just a few of us, but Brad, Abby, Pete, very new to the club. Matt and myself sort of still, several months into being sort of chair and vice chair. And, Matt, I remember sort of sending me a message just saying, I'm not going anywhere. I can't remember who it was, who had resigned. And you sort of think about, well, okay, so what's happened in the last 4 years? Where were we 4 years ago, and where are we now? And almost to the day, 4 years ago, we were playing in front of 89 people at home to Amesbury Rovers, and we lost 6-1. In that time, DTFC TV, podcast, we've tripled the number of volunteers. We're now just under 50 volunteers. And I don't mean youth section coaches, I don't mean Steve, Rob, Liam sort of volunteering their time either. I'm talking about people who are involved in the running of the club in terms of doing 101 different things. Volunteers coming in to run our community groups. We've doubled attendances. So 4 years ago, average attendance 110. Programme here from Scottish programme on Tuesday night. 227 we are at the moment. So off the field, we've restructured, we've changed the club, but on the field we're still at step 5. And it takes as long as it takes, Andy. I think in a sense it's a long-winded way of answering your question, but if it takes 2 years, if it takes 3, well, that's how long it takes. But we can't, in a sense, throw money at something where there is no guarantee. That's not.
Is there always risk? Probably not the right word. Is there always maybe that you want to be like that club, because we are Dunstable Town? You're like, let's just try and let's just chuck a bucket load of money in it. And I think that's not the sensible thing to do. Has there ever been that temptation to think, do you know what? Let's,
No.
And I would kind of already know the answer. I know people listening, and they'll be interested to hear your answer, because we don't often get to hear, chairman speak like that. Was there ever a temptation, or was there maybe a pressure to go, we've got to get this team to step 4 or back to step 4?
No. Look, if you remember when Joe came to the club, and one of his first podcast interviews with you, Andy, and it was a conversation I had with Joe just before, around the time that he was leaving, because it intrigued me, because Joe said, I'm here to get promotion. I'm here to do it quickly. And he said, I know it's not necessarily what the board want, but it will tell me, if I don't do it, it will tell me either my assessment of players isn't as good as I think it is, or I'm not as good a coach as I think was. Apologies to Joe if I've paraphrased it incorrectly, but that's my sort of memory of it. And that's a huge pressure, in a sense, to put on yourself. And ultimately, Joe wasn't able to. We came very, very close. And if you think about it, even when Joe came into the club, he had a very clear idea of his management team. And that sort of within a couple of days, was it Rob, wasn't it, who went off to Real Bedford? But him and his brother were part of Joe's team. When Joe was appointed, it was him and Kyle, and Rob as well, and Lee. So you sort of feel, okay, Joe had a really good stab at it. We were so close, and we couldn't match this. The following season, we couldn't match it. That chemistry, whatever it is that happens in a team, and in a sense, Andy, it's almost a bit like music. Like you get a band of 4 people, and then the guitarist leaves, or somebody leaves, and then the next album. It's not really quite the same, is it? But there's a chemistry involved, and there's a chemistry involved in football as well.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And sometimes these things work, sometimes they don't.
Let's fast forward to where we are now. Great win against MK Irish on Tuesday. I watched it back on the VO today. Couldn't make the game myself. Life got in the way.
You and me both.
But watched it back. Very fortunate to have the VO footage. Steve Lewitt messaged me, said it's probably the best Dunstable Town performance he'd seen since he'd been here. It's watching it back, that first half especially, was probably the best Dunstable Town performance I've seen. And what was good for me to see was stuff that I witnessed at training and stuff that I witnessed at Swanee and Steve and Rich and Liam and Rory and everyone. They talk about it. I saw a lot of it on the football field. We mentioned patience earlier on in the show. I think Tuesday night was when that came to fruition and we were seeing what these lads have been doing on a Thursday night at training. Really did come into a game. And for whatever reason, like you just mentioned, sometimes in football there's a chemistry and something has to click. It really did click on Tuesday. How pleased are you now of where Dunstable Town Football Club are on the field? You mentioned FC Romania over there. I was in the dugout with the boys that day. One of the best feelings I've had at a non-league game. I'm with you. More for Steve and Rich and Swanee and Liam, because they might not say it, but there's always pressure at any level of sport. So to see them get that win, and then we went to Biggleswade, then we went to Potton, which I've never experienced any Dunstable Town win over there. It seems like a black hole for Dunstable Town. We went there and probably put in, up until MKR, one of our best performances of the season. So now we flip from the start of today's show. How pleased are you where this club are right now?
Yeah, very pleased. Very, very pleased. Still a work in progress, and nobody's getting complacent. I know Steve's not getting. I'm not getting complacent.
No, he'll probably kill me for the way I worded that question. He's like, we haven't won anything yet, Andy. But you know what I mean? It's like from where it's good to see the boys. And these lads deserve it. They deserve to get these victories. And they put in the work. We can all sit here in front of a camera and talk about it, but they have to do it.
And you know what, Andy? I'm sort of just reflecting on sort of what, the answers of one of my earlier questions. You were saying about, pressure on the boys. And in a sense, but you're there at training every Thursday. Steve Lew's there at training every Thursday. You're both football people.
I think Steve Lewin lives here. I think he's got a secret house somewhere. I'm sure he has.
Yeah. Don't tell Christy that. Neil's there every Thursday. I try and go most Thursdays. You can see on the training every Thursday what they're doing. You can see the ideas, but it took a bit of time for it to gel, for the ideas to sink in. And I think, like you're saying, what we've seen in those 4 victories is that's it. When it clicks,
it really does click.
That's what they're capable of. Yeah. And there were seeds of it in that Bulldog game. Yeah. We had a goal disallowed. We gave away probably a preventable goal at the death, didn't we? To go, to lose 1-0. Then we played MK Irish at home in the league.
Played really well.
And we played really well. So that, in a sense, that victory, that game at Romania, that win was coming, and lovely feeling.
It was. Just before we wrap up today's show, there have been some questions for you coming today, which I will get up in a minute. I believe the club are going to be in the spotlight. Come Christmas, it's not just the Christmas lights that are going to be up. Dunstable Town's name could be up in lights. Do you want to inform our loyal listeners of why we might be hearing and seeing more about Dunstable Town come the Christmas season?
Okay, thanks, Andy. So we're a community benefit society. So we've restructured 3 years ago. So we operate now as a social enterprise. And I know this is old news to many people, but there will be new listeners. See the listing figures, and there's got to be some of those have got to be.
It's all Brad's work, it's not me.
Yeah. So we operate as a social enterprise. So that means that for us, what we do off the field Monday to Friday has as much importance and as much weighting as the results on a Saturday and a Tuesday night. And what we've been doing for the last 3 years is establishing a network of peer support mental health groups. We've got 3 of those. We've got a group every Thursday run by Lee Nutley, Vicky Harding, which is for people who are lonely and socially isolated. So one of the biggest causes of depression for a lot of people, particularly as they get older, is loneliness and social isolation. So our work in the mental health field has been acknowledged by the Football Supporters Association. So I have a seat on the National Council through the community-owned clubs network, and my sort of remit was to try and get the FSA to give as much prominence to the importance of good mental health as it does for Fans for Diversity, for the women's game, you know, and rightly so, but we wanted positive mental health to be there. So I put together a strategy paper. It's gone to the national board of the FSA. Part of it involves doing sort of things at a local level, but part of it also is trying to establish an informal partnership with National Mind. So locally, you know, our partnership with, or our relationship with Mind BLMK is now 7 years old. You come to Creasy Park, you look at the advertising boards. You know, a couple of years ago we had Mind BLMK on the front of the shirt. So we know from what people have told us, so anecdotally, people will have come up to me, they'll have come up to Ian, they'll have come up to Matt and said, because of what you're doing, I've now been to see my GP. So I know I've not been well, but I've never had the confidence to go and talk about how I've been feeling. And this sort of low-key, low-level support for people who might be struggling with their mental health, we know how important it is. You know, I've been at the Mind BLMK AGM today up in Flitwick. Oh my goodness, Andy, it's you know, the stories from people with lived experience are, you know, really life affirming in terms of the good that's out there, the good that's in the community. And there is no reason why football shouldn't be doing more than it's doing at the moment to support people, because this is an issue that 1 in 4 of us will face at some stage in our lifetime. You think for me and my family, that's me or one of my kids, isn't it? You know, it's so the stigma that's been associated with, you know, poor mental health has been around for far too long, and football needs to do something about it. So, you know, we've lost Gary Speed, we've lost John Fashanu to suicide. There is so, you know, the FSA as a grassroots football organisation has got the power to, I think, support people throughout football. So part of what I've done in terms of the strategy paper is look at sort of making the sort of the affiliate members more prominent in terms of mental health, and as I say, establishing an informal partnership with Mind. And Brad is putting together a film that we're going to shoot before the Cottfosters game. We'll be having mental health first aiders at that game and every game, and we think, we're not 100% certain, we think that we are probably the only professional and semi-professional football club that does that or will be doing that. And we'll make sure that we've got this wonderful facility here at the hub that if people do need to come and talk to somebody regarding their mental health, they've got protected time and a safe space to do so. So Brad's film is going to be seen by, you know, the great and the good from not just the football world, but from the media, from entertainment. And the hope is that Dunstable Town gets some recognition. Well, I was going to say the hope is Dunstable Town will be getting the recognition. And yeah, where that takes us, I don't know. But I've used the example on another podcast of when I was in Morocco in January, and I went for one of these days out, and I got talking to a guy from Norwich, and he, what are you doing out here in January, etc. And I told him, and he said, what do you do for a living? So I said, well, retired. Okay, but what do you do? And I said, chairman of Dunstable Town Football Club. And he said, George Best.
Yeah.
And it's like the Little Britain sketch. You know, Molly Sugden's bridesmaid. Listen, we've lived off George Best for the last 50 years. But that association doesn't pay our bills.
Yeah.
That association is not going to be giving Steve a playing budget, a step forward playing budget in the next year. That's to keep Matt happy.
Let's get Matt going to some new ground, please.
Yeah, exactly. So we have to be doing something different. And if the recognition that what we're doing every single day in the community, 12 different support groups, big shout out to Ian Bateman, of course, for the Walking Football groups.
The legend is.
Absolutely. 150 local people being supported every week. If Dunstable Town gets some recognition for that, that's lovely. And if a major sponsor wants to come in and help us and support us, that would be great.
Awesome. Keep up the great work there, mate. Andrew, we're near the end of today's show, and Steve is going to kill me if I'm late for training. So we did have a couple of questions that come in for you today via our social media channels at DTFC Pod on Twitter if you want to check us out. Scotty, good old Scotty's come in. He said 30% of our referees have only officiated at step 6, and our matches have been their only step 5 experience. The Beds FA referee operations manager has overseen more matches so far than he did last season. Is there a shortage of qualified or experienced referees at this level?
That is such a good question. Dan would be the person to answer it because Dan obviously now is the.
If I get Dan on here, I don't think Brad's got enough film.
Match fixture secretary. So Dan goes to the AGM. The honest answer is, I think if you look in the Spartan handbook, so level 4 referees, which are the referees that we get at our matches, there's about 80 names. So I think possibly a lot of these guys will have been promoted. So they are level 4 refs, but they'll have been maybe level 5 last season or something like that. So I hear Scotty's questions. When I look on MOAS and full-time and things like that, I think, I don't know that name. That must be another new guy. So is there a shortage? Not that I'm aware of, no.
Yeah, get me and Matt talking about referees.
I'd rather not.
You might get a different answer. Liam, our coach Liam, funny enough, he's not out training tonight. Just thought I'd throw that out there. What is Andrew's favourite artist and album of all time? Had some great musical chats with him, he says.
Who's that from?
Liam, coach.
Liam Bryant.
Yeah, here at Dunstable Town.
Sorry, what was the question?
Who is your favourite artist or favourite band, favourite artist and favourite album of all time?
Well, favourite artist has to be The Clash. And was it favourite album?
Yeah.
Okay, it would have to be the first one because I think it changed it sort of influenced who I became as an adult. I know that sounds a bit sort of wishy-washy and maybe a bit hippie-like, but when that album came out, 1976, 1977, it spoke to me, and I know it spoke to Ian Bateman in a way that all good music should do, so that it sends, the hairs on the back of your neck standing up, and it spoke to me in a way.
Ian's got hair.
Yeah, apparently so.
Okay.
So, wow. I was going to say to choose a Clash favourite album is a bit like asking which of my 3 daughters is my favourite. But I think
don't answer that.
Yeah, no, I won't. I think it has to be the first one because that for me was the start of something, and I think so much of that music has influenced so much of the stuff that I do in life. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for taking the time to see. It's been an extended edition of the podcast this week, but we don't often get the chance to sit down face to face, and I don't have to come to your house and help you with Zoom. It's been great to you, mate. It's great to see where the club are going. On and off the pitch, I know that Steve and the boys will get it right. It's great to see what's going on with yourself and with the club and all the community work that we're doing regarding mental health and stuff like that. If you would like to check out any more Dunstable Town content at Dunstable Town FC on X, the podcast can be found at DTFC Pod. As I always say, Brad's doing an amazing job with our YouTube. We need to get him to 1,000 subscribers at least by the end of the season.
Yeah.
Go and subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Can I just say a huge thank you to you?
No, cheers, mate.
Because what you do is brilliant. And Brad's out of campus.
He won't ever come back. I can't get him.
No, I know, but a huge thank you to Brad. And can we just give a shout out to James Smith as well?
Yeah, what he's doing with the Twitter is unbelievable.
Isn't it? He's...
I was following live online when I wasn't here on Tuesday, and it's obviously he was like, they scored, we equalised. It was bam. I was at the game. Kind of the updates were really good. I don't even think he was here. I think he was doing it from home. He's
a top
he is a top guy.
Yeah, I'm so pleased that, in a sense, the club he's found a home in the club. Yeah. Because in a sense, that's what I want us to be. Mm-hmm. Improving the lives of others is great. As I say, 12 groups, supporting 150 people, but it's for all of us as well, because we're all going to struggle at times in our lives, and this needs to be a home for people who want to be doing something and who love football. Well, this is your home.
Andrew, keep up the good work, mate.
Thanks, buddy.
And I'll catch you soon.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you.